So there's a couple of guys on that aren't Tango users and a couple that are. And so what we're going to talk about is essentially, well, we're in a sequence right now of using Tango, or how reliability engineers use Tango. And last 2 weeks ago, when we did this before, we were talking essentially about what do the reliability engineers do, what are some of the tools in Tango, what are some of the benchmark things like MTBFs and emergency work orders and average vibration levels and so forth. Last one of these sessions, we were essentially talking about how do you identify locations with repetitive failures, high cost of failure, low MTBFs, and common failures patterns. And so we talked about that from several aspects. Now this week we're moving to part 2, and I think this has got 5 or 6 parts to it. So there's a bunch of things we're going to talk about, but this is really talking about how do you manage your predictive maintenance, your condition-based maintenance program. How do you know that you're doing what you say you're going to do, and following the priorities and goals of the management. Route adherence is one of the items we're going to talk about. Now, for you guys at Shermco, and I might just bring up a Shermco database in a moment or two if that's useful to you guys. But here's a foundry that produces water valves, big, large water valves. And they gave me permission to use their database. And you can write a condition entry against a component in the tree. So here's a motor. If I wanted to write a condition entry, I could add a condition entry and have that available. What I get if I do that is I get the documentation of a problem. What I don't get is I don't get a recording of what was measured and okay and what was missed. And so if you want to gather the information on what was missed and measured and okay, in addition to the problems, you have to do a condition assessment task. But let me just bring one up real quick and talk about that for a moment. So these are assessment tasks. This one's got 0 of 68 items done. This is the clean room. And if we go into that assessment task, we have a number of things in front of us. We've got the fact that this first machine, that's kind of lucky. It had, last time it was nothing measured, measured no problem, or nothing measured. So you get to the last time it was measured. If it has a problem, let's see if I find one. I don't see any that have a problem on this route. But if it had a problem, I'd be able to look at the information from the previous entry. But what Tango wants me to do on any of these now is tell it that I measured it and there's no problem, or I measured it and it was mildly abnormal, or I measured it and there was a condition comment. So measured no problem, measured no problem, but with the comment, really the same thing, but I want to add a comment about it for some reason. Measured mildly abnormal is kind of special. Most anything where I do a condition entry ends up on a integrated condition report. So if I want to keep track of things, but I don't want them on the integrated condition report, I'll do a mildly abnormal. And then measured condition entry documents the problem, and then nothing measured, equipment down, skipped, various reasons, are telling the system that that piece of equipment wasn't measured. And so these states variable depending on the database. So if you guys need different states, if you want to take some of them away, you want to add some more to it, then any of that can be done. So that's the reason we have condition assessment task versus writing a condition entry from the tree. Is the assessment task also gives you information on what was measured and okay and what was missed or not measured. So the first thing you have to ask then, if I've got assessment task, is did I do that assessment task? Did I do it on time? And so I've got, let's say I have, you saw that assessment task it had 68 points on it. What was my point compliance? How good was I at collecting all the points on the task? And so I may find that I had 68 points, 10 of them were measured, no problem, 2 or 3 of them had problems, and the rest of them were equipment down or not, or skipped or not measured. And so this route adherence report, and so you'll find this in Tango, you'll find it under services. Let's just kind of show you where you find this report. Back in Tango, under services, this route adherence report is giving me each route, what the technology was, how many times it's been run in the time frame. You see, and I know it's probably hard to see, but I've run this from January 1st, 16 to November 7th, 16. So in this particular case, this route has been run 4 times. It has 53 items on the task for a total of 212. 127 were normal. 84 of them were assessments not made, for a percentage of 60% that were assessed. So, so that's telling me that for that route, for the 4 times it's been measured, I've only gotten 60% of what I said I was going to measure. If we look at those reports, and this isn't a live report, if I were in that, I could roll down to see all the tasks that were 100% compliant and so forth. But anyway, this is telling me the routes, how often they've been run in that time frame, and what I accomplished with the point compliance. While we're thinking about routes, let's talk about a little bit about route adherence or route compliance. The same sort of thing is true for the routes. Just in general, how many of the routes did I run on time? I've got a route. It's supposed to be run for October. Did I get it in October, or did I slip? Did the October route slip into November? Or I'm not going to do it at all for various reasons. So this particular report's on a monthly scorecard. It's route adherence. And this, as you can see, this is for several months. It's telling me some months I was at 100% and some months I wasn't at 100%. So this is, whereas the first report is point compliance, how good did I do on each route for getting the points that I said I was going to get. The other is route compliance, how good was I for a route, for my tasks, my assignments. How good was I with actually doing the assignments I said I was going to do in the time frame I said I was going to do it in. But where does that all roll out to in Tango? There's a couple of ways to look at that. One of the ways I like to look at that is the asset fitness report. Now let's blow this, see if we can blow this up on the screen a little bit. As you can see, this is giving me my areas of the plant. If I drill into residency, I've got the assets. If I drill into an asset, I should be able to go to the components. This is telling me my areas of the plant. Residency is one of the units of the plant. These are my assets, and so then this is telling me for that how many in that area. For example, in the whole plant, there's 1,900 assets. These aren't components; these are assets. One level up from components. There's 1,900 assets in the program. 12.3% of them are risk. 84.5 are fit. Fit means that they've been assessed as measured, no problem. So they're normal. So 84% of their assets are normal. 3.2% of the assets on the whole in the whole database, 3.2% have defects, and 12.3% are at risk. And at risk means that they've been you've tried to measure them, and you had to assess them as not measured, for down or skipped or not available for whatever reason they weren't measured. So these guys are doing great. Their goal is 80%. They're at 85% fit, 12% that are at risk, and just a few percent that are that have defects. Now you see as we go down the different parts of the plant, mixing and so forth, some areas, for example, resin A, B, and C have 8.3% defects or condition entries. Pump house has 60%. So obviously we've got to look at the pump house and see, why do I have so many problems in the pump house? This is their severity levels, PD1, PD2, critical. So how many problems are critical? 1. How many 25 are at the next level? 43 are at the level above that or below that. And then delinquent follow-ups are how many are above. I believe you set delinquent, the period for delinquency, and it's part of your database setup. That's probably 60 days. It might be 90, but it's probably 60. So you're asking here, or maybe this particular is so high they may not have that set up at all. But you can set that up to say how many are over a certain date range, or how many are over a certain aging. Since they've got 60 and 60, I'm guessing they've got, that hadn't been set up, and so there's no aging there at all. So anyway, this is called the Asset Fitness Report. And again, if you want to get to that in Tango, oops, try hitting the right buttons again. That's Asset Health Report. If we go to plant level reports, here's our Asset Fitness Summary. So that's the report that we were just looking at, the Asset Fitness Summary. So Asset Fitness Summary is telling us, I think the biggest thing it's telling us is how many defects I have, how many are good, but the big thing it's telling me is how at risk am I. I've seen a lot of these, a lot of plants where that at-risk number is enormous. And some of that's because they miss tasks. If you don't do a task on time, if you've got an October task and it slides out to November, then you're at risk over everything on that task. And so this is a really harsh measurement. It means that you're going to have to do what you said you're going to do, and you're going to do it in the time frame you said you're going to do it in. The Asset Health Report's a little, let's get that back on screen a little bit better. The Asset Health Report's a little different in the fact it takes each of our technologies. It tells us what percentage of normal and condition entry or problems are in each technology. So for example, for this database, vibration is monitoring 482 assets. This is an asset report again. I could have gone down to the components and it would be, probably double or triple that. Of which in this database, 8.7% have condition problems, and 89% are measured normal. Now, this report does not consider at risk. It doesn't consider machines that have been missed. So all it does is it looks at the last time it was measured. That last time it was measured may have been 4 months ago. It looks at the last time it was measured, and it says, was it normal, or was it, did it have a condition problem the last time it was measured? So whereas the Asset Fitness Report has a notion of at risk, the Asset Health Report does not. All right, so we talked about point adherence, we talked about asset health, we talked about asset fitness, we talked about route adherence. Let's talk a little bit about metrics associated with condition entries. There is a part of Tango called condition entry analysis. Let's look at that for a minute. We are going to go to the condition entry analysis, and we're going to do a fault distribution or condition entry trend report. Now, I don't know that this is going to be real helpful because I don't think the decline is has done much in this database. But let's look at it, and then we'll go to a more active or a database where the users are participating.
Well, we've got their reds down, but I don't think they use it that much.
Yep, I agree with you. You guys are putting a lot into it, but I don't think the clients do much. So anyway, condition entries open. So this is telling me that there's 33 opens, 14 opens. So this is every month and how many condition entries you've opened each month. 2 were opened in July, August. How many were closed in the month? So here's where you went in and closed a bunch, evidently.
Yes, sir.
Back in June. Condition entries closed that were opened in the month, average days to close. And so your average days to close is coming down, but well, for a while there, your total condition entries are open, but they've come way down since you closed all those. And
well, I don't think they really understood the reports when we were first doing it. And then
yeah, I agree with you.
Get a lot of face-to-face with them, and you know, kind of prioritize their reds, and that has brought it down. They've been doing real well as far as reliability goes. Of course, they're been in an outage for the last month and a half, but
Yep.
It seems like they're getting the idea.
Yep. So I agree with you. Their average days to close are falling down around 53 days. So it's not great, but it's better than it was. And so I think that, you know, this is a brand new program. It's just getting started. I think it's winding up pretty good. Let's look at another program that I have permission. I have permission from a few of the clients to go to their databases, and so let's look at MSD, which is a sewer district of Cincinnati. And let's run that same report. Condition entry analysis and fault distribution. And here I could have filtered it to a technology and to a date range. I just let it default. Oops. I'm sorry, guys. I did the wrong.
Hey, fine.
Item. Let's pick that trend report. Okay, so again, you see how these guys have been running their program since 2012, and so even in the first year or 2 years, they were pretty erratic on how many they were opening, and you see that lately they've really gotten a handle on their program and their reliability. So they're opening a lot less.
Clear trend on that.
Yep, I mean they're closing in the month. Again, they're looking a lot better. Opened condition entries closed that were opened in the month. Those are the ones that are turned around fast. Average days to close and total open. So they're total open. I mean, they were running 100 or more open at a time earlier. Now they're running 20. You know, looks like they're running in the range of 20 a month that's open. And this is a very large facility. They've got they're monitoring a couple thousand assets here.
Wow.
And so they're just on top of things real well at this particular. Right. And their average days to close, they're running 50 to 15. So they're looks like on a good day they're down less than 20, but on the whole they're probably. But they're kind of doing better and better as time goes on as far as how they go. So anyway, that is metrics associated with the condition entries. How many are written, how many are closed, average time to close, that sort of thing. Here's another one of those, time to implement. That's very much like the average time to close. Average days to close. Now, I will say that I picked this one for a specific reason. This average days to close looks great. It's falling off. And then look at this particular plant's total open, at 350 open. Well, once they start closing some of those real old condition entries that are hanging out in here and bring that down, then that average days to close is going to jump back up. So what they're doing is they're closing the ones they find quickly, the ones they've recently found. But there's a whole bunch of things that are hanging out that they haven't closed.
Right.
All right, let's look at a few other reports. This is equipment not measured in date range. All right, so I've got a report, that asset fitness report, that tells me that 15-20% of my assets weren't monitored when I said I was going to monitor them. Well, now I want to run a report that says what pieces of equipment haven't been monitored in the date range. So I gave it a date range of the first of the year till today, or to yesterday. And so these pieces of equipment on this report, and this is an Excel spreadsheet that I just took a cut of, but these locations, this technologies have not been measured this year. And so you have to ask yourself, is it important? Is this a safety or is this a critical piece of equipment? It hadn't been measured in the last 9, 10 months. Do I need to do something special to get hold of this piece of equipment to do the monitoring I need to do on it? So anyway, that's a report. It's equipment not measured in date range. Again, here's our monthly scorecard. We looked at that. Locations not measured. All right, so that's locations not measured in date range. Now that's an old report, and so it's a little weird, but if we gave it a date range there, then it's going to give me an Excel spreadsheet, just like what I showed you a moment ago. And it's going to be all the locations that haven't been measured in the date range that we set. So then there's another report, and that is, I pose the question: how do you know that important locations are being monitored? And so there's another report that tells me for each location which technologies are being applied. So as you see, most of these, here's a lot of switch gear, here's a pump, and so here are the technologies: electrical offline, electrical online, vibration, oil, ultrasonic tomography, and just true or false beside each technology. And so, one of the things that you could do is you could go through and look at each one and say, have I applied the technologies? But what I would recommend is you set a criticality for each, especially the high criticality pieces of equipment. And then you run this report sorted by criticality. So I've got all my high criticality machines at the top, and then I looked at those high criticality machines to see, am I applying vibration? Am I applying thermography and ultrasonics? Am I applying the technology that I should apply? I had another report that's kind of interesting is the severity over time report. I just picked, I'll show you how to run that in a moment, but in this particular case I picked a area of the plant, ran the report. You see that one thing that jumped out at me is this flash dryer was in alarm that it was okay, then it was in alarm again. So I said, that's kind of interesting. Let's take a look at that. So this is 12 months, and it's by technology. It's 12 months of any technology you're applying. But so I dug into this flash dryer for a moment, and that took me to the fact that it's got 3 balance condition entries and 2 bearing condition entries. There are I could dig into more, but there's a summary of the entries. And I noticed that these guys had an RCFA for the bearing problem. So they talked about the failures most likely due to an assembly area. It can be confusing to tighten a nut on this style taper lock bearing. So anyway, and then they did a root cause corrective action to do better training and a how-to procedure. So they were, again, they're on top of not only did they find the problem, but how do we prevent this problem from happening like that in the future. All right, so let's look a little bit for how do I get to that. I saw them at this MSD, Municipal Sewer District facility. We'll go to Mill Creek. We'll pick one of the areas. Sludge dewatering is as good as any. Nope, that's not all that good. It's only got 1 asset. Let's find one with a little more assets than that. All right. Well, guys, fighting with my computer here. Try that again. There we go. All right, so secondary thickening. We've got a bunch of centrifuges and things. Let's run that report for, excuse me, for this thickening area. So if I come under other reports, I'll go to condition, assessment, severity over time. So they're over 12 months. They haven't had any problems in electrical offline. They haven't had any problems in online. They haven't had any oil problems. They haven't had any tomography problems. All green. So vibration has at least a yellow level of problem. Let's open this up. All right, so here are all the assets in that area, and now let's look at vibration. So again, this is giving me when it was monitored and what was found on a 12-month view. And so this is just saying that really this area of the plant's pretty good. It's got, one or two little problems that came and went fairly quickly, it looks like. If for some reason I want to look at that machine, centrifuge number 2, TC, let's look at it. Just show you how I would find out more about that. I'm going to search by locations. I'm going to paste that in, Control V. I am going to put an asterisk before and after that because I cut off some of that on the end there, and hit find. So there's our centrifuge number 2, secondary thickening. And if I go to let's locate that in tree. So it's got the centrifuge, the motor, and so forth. And so again, if I want to look at that motor, there's several things I could look at. This assessment history report. This is every time it's been monitored and what was found. That doesn't look too good, does it? Measure no problem, measure no problem, measure no problem, measure no problem. Nothing measured. So it's never had a problem. Well, I take that back. Ultrasonic found a problem in 2013. So this is the history of every time it's been monitored and what technology monitored, the data was monitored, and what was found. So I can go to any one component and get that history.
Nice.
And now let's go back to that motor. And the location reports. Now this one doesn't have any condition entries. Let's find something that maybe has some condition entries. Maybe the motor does. It was the motor. Let's try the gearbox. Oh, Pump's got one comment about a waveform alarm. So anyway, let's. What I was going to show you if I picked one that had a problem was we could have gone over to the history. So the history of that pump. So we go to location. You go to condition history, and this isn't going to have any history. Well, it's got one little thing, but if I had a big long history, that would all be here of all the problems and what was the condition entries and what was done to close them. All right. So we've gone through the things I planned to talk about today. We've talked about route adherence. I'm sorry, we've talked about point adherence. We've talked about asset health report. We've talked about asset fitness report. We've talked about monthly scorecard. Tango has lots of reports. We've talked about condition entry analysis. We've talked about equipment not measured in date range, and we've talked about what equipment has what technologies assigned to it. We've talked about severity over time. So with that, to me, those are the things in Tango that help a reliability engineer assess how well the program's doing. You know, previously we talked about how does a reliability engineer find problem locations. Well, this is how do you find problems in your program. Now, things that are coming up next week, let's see what we got for next week. Root cause failure analysis and management of corrective action. So that's a whole root cause failure topic. Then we've got repair vendor management and failure autopsies. Then we got component lifecycle management, critical spares, basic measurements of reliability like MTBF and root cause of failure and cost of failure. And so anyway, those are the things we got coming up in the next 3 of these sessions. All right, guys, any questions? Anything you want to talk about?
Not from us, but thank you.
Well, thank you for attending. Like I say, the goal of these is every couple of weeks we just kind of pick a topic and talk about how Tango provides information associated with that topic. Any ideas you have, I'd certainly love to hear them, and call me especially if you need any of these reports turned on in your Tango database. But just give me a call if you're hunting something. Either we have the report and it's not turned on for you, or we can get it for you with a report.
Okay,
anyway,
sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks.